I had always heard that the old town nestled beneath the mountains held secrets that were meant to stay buried. But when I bought the abandoned clock repair workshop for just $500, I thought I had made the deal of a lifetime. The townspeople would look at me and smile, but their smiles weren't sympathetic. They were afraid. The moment I stepped inside the shop, an unnatural chill wrapped around me. Hundreds of clocks covered the walls. Not a single one was ticking. Every clock was frozen at the exact same time, 12:04 a.m. That was when my German Shepherd Nova did something she had never done before. She stood in the corner of the room and began growling at the empty air, as if someone was standing there. The real suspense began when I found an old leather diary hidden beneath the counter. On the very first page was my name. The shop had been closed for 40 years. How did my name end up in that diary? At first, I convinced myself it was coincidence, but as I turned the pages, I realized this was no ordinary workshop. The former owner, Arthur Sterling, wasn't repairing clocks. He was collecting regrets. Each clock had a small note attached to it. One read, "I shouldn't have stopped that car that night." Another said, "I should have told the truth." Every note included a date and a time of death. Meanwhile, Nova began scratching at an old wooden panel in the wall. When I pried it open, I found an old voice recorder hidden inside. I pressed play. What came out wasn't just a scream. It was a scream recorded 20 years ago, and behind it, there was a voice I recognized. It belonged to the town's current mayor, Mayor Alistair Thorne. But he was known as a respected social worker. What had he been doing in this workshop 20 years ago with Arthur Sterling? I decided to dig deeper. At the back of the shop stood a large mirror. Nova began whining in front of it. I noticed a small hole in the frame. When I slipped my finger into it, the entire mirror swung open like a door. Behind it was a hidden passage leading down into a basement. A foul, rotten smell drifted upward. At first, I thought it might be a dead animal, but what I saw below made my blood run cold. There were personal belongings scattered everywhere: glasses, wallets, rings, items that belonged to people who had disappeared from this town over the past 20 years. This was no simple mystery. Arthur Sterling wasn't just eccentric. He was a time-fixated serial killer. He didn't kill his victims outright. He kept them imprisoned here, trapped, until their time ran out. And every missing person shared one thing in common. They had gathered evidence against Mayor Alistair Thorne. Arthur Sterling had been the mayor's cleaner. He imprisoned the mayor's enemies in what he called Time's Prison. Then I saw it. On the basement wall was a single clock still ticking. On it was written one word: next. Beneath it was my name. That's when I realized the workshop hadn't been sold cheaply. I had been lured here. Suddenly, I heard the workshop door open upstairs. Nova stopped growling and pressed herself against me in fear. Someone was up there. I could hear the scraping sound of a metal rod being dragged across the floor. I hid in the darkness of the basement, gripping an old screwdriver. Heavy footsteps descended the stairs. The man lit an old lantern. In the flickering light, I saw his face. It was Silas Vane, the real estate agent who had sold me the property. He said, "My father stopped time in this town. You came here and started it again. Now you must become part of it." He claimed to be Arthur Sterling's son. I signaled to Nova. She lunged at him. During the struggle, an old cabinet crashed to the floor. Behind it, something horrifying was revealed: a skeleton. In its hand was the final page of a diary. It stated that Arthur Sterling had made his own son his last victim, which meant the man standing before me was not his son. He was one of the missing persons from 20 years ago, someone who had developed Stockholm Syndrome and become Arthur's devoted follower. I managed to knock him unconscious and called the police. When authorities excavated the basement, they found enough evidence to sentence Mayor Alistair Thorne to life in prison. I didn't burn the workshop. I repaired the clocks, but I changed their time. Now they all tick correctly. Nova sleeps peacefully there, and when the townspeople look at me now, their smiles carry gratitude instead of fear. But there is one thing that still keeps me awake at night. When I checked my own wristwatch, it had stopped. 12:04 a.m. The battery was brand new. Has time truly stopped again? Or is this only the beginning?